wondering how I got into this mix. Mind playing tricks and I'm fiending for a fix. Habits overriding, imploding into explosion. Tapering away like ocean, coastal erosion. Bringing down falls like a Shakespeare tragedy. Expectation versus novelty and odyssey. Trusting the truth of my power like a battery. Showing a new way to each and every agonist.
Free and to live free every single day, especially not just on the day of where, excuse me, but I don't know if this nation actually stands for freedom. In fact, I know it doesn't, and I'm not even sure I support this idea of a nation state. In fact, I know I don't. So understanding the true history of this nation, and yeah, maybe on some level at some point there were people trying to fight back and claim their freedom against the British, but overall, on the whole, that's just a propaganda message that's been sold to us to see these people as heroes. But still, if you want to use that day to celebrate, eat hot dogs, barbecue, hang out with people you care about, I'm not going to hate on you. I'm not going to hate on you in general. But I hope and wish and pray that people will think deeper about these types of ideas. And in just a little bit, I'm going to tell you how I spent my July 4th and what I did, and we'll talk about that very important topic. But first, I want to remind you guys to subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/consciousresistance. Follow us on Twitter at theconsciousrn. Follow me on Twitter at dbroslivefree. Like us and follow us on Facebook, The Conscious Resistance Network. If you'd like to support me and thus The Conscious Resistance even further, when you go to Patreon, you can sign up to be a monthly supporter. For as little as $1 a month, you will get access to all these podcasts and interviews and things exclusively to my Patreon supporters, and everything else you'll get 1 to 2, maybe 3 days ahead of the YouTube, Facebook followers. So that's just to show support to those who want to support me beyond my journalism and my articles that I already get paid for. If you want to throw $1 at me once a month to help make this task easier and allow me to dedicate more of my time towards spreading ideas of freedom and information, then go ahead and do that, and that is always appreciated. So let's dive into it. It's been a few weeks since I've been here, been very busy, April, May, and June, and I'm preparing to hit the road in August to work on this upcoming documentary called Liberty, that is about the American libertarian movement from 2012 to the present day. I'm going to be a second camera on that, and if all goes well with that, that should be out by the fall, and I think that's going to be an important documentary. We'll talk more about that as it gets closer, but I'll be on the road for that all of August. I'm going to still try to get lots of interviews and content for you, so stay tuned and stay subscribed. Also, just a reminder, in the next couple weeks, the Jade Helm military exercise, which I have done no content on. I haven't done an article, video, podcast about this. I've been sort of doing my own research and keeping my mouth shut for a while. But as it gets closer, I think I'm going to write something about this. And in fact, I'm going to take a trip to Bastrop, Texas. I'm going to make this happen. It's only a couple hours from Houston. And that is where the Texas portion of this military exercise is going to take place. And I'm going to go there, film interviews, try to talk to anybody in the area, talk to military members if they decide to speak, which I doubt. But yeah, stay tuned to that. But let's dive into what we have going on in the Conscious Resistance Network. Our latest video is an interview from Danilo, aka Peaceful Anarchism. He did an interview with Blooded the Brave, who is a voluntarist rapper and freedom fighter, does some great work. Check out that interview if you want to know more about him and what got him started and what inspires him. And I think we're going to make him our music spotlight of the week. Every week we feature independent, new, underground, raw, conscious music of all genres that is either educating people about the world politically or empowering them and spreading a conscious message. So check out our music tab if you want to find more music to keep you moving and grooving. The latest video I put out was called Finding Honesty in a Free World, and this is the first video I've done in a couple months. I think it's very, very important, and I do recommend it to you if you have not listened to it or seen the video version, because I talk about where I've been the past couple months and having to face some difficult truths about myself and my own dishonesty and things like that, and how that plays into a free world. So check that one out. We've also got part 1 and 2 of another interview from Peaceful Anarchism. He interviewed Leslie Frost, truth seeker and sentient human being, part 1 and 2. Find out more about her and her work. And we've also got a couple of videos from Katie Chaos, soon to be Mama Chaos. Shout out to Katie. Hope you're doing all right. Hope you and Jason are doing good. Awesome people. And Katie continues to put out great content for us. Her last video is called Natural Birth: What, Why, How, and Resources. And for those of you who are parents or soon to be parents, check that one out. And if you're just interested in the topic, check it out. There's also some good comments back and forth from people on YouTube on those subjects, so that's pretty cool. And another video I put out, my first one from Detroit, training with Detroit Threat Management. I've got more that are going to be coming out in this coming week. Lots of work coming out for me, but I'm putting out the rest of my Detroit videos. So this one is me interviewing and training with Dale Brown of Detroit Threat Management. I think it's a great video, and it shows a short portion of the training that he offers to improve relationships between community and those who are supposedly doing the protection. And in this case, this would be the police force. But I think most of us know and agree that the police as they exist today as an institution are not optimum, and they are not the final evolution of what community protection can look like or has looked like in the past. And Dale Brown does a lot of good work on trying to change that relationship. So check out that video. Katie also put out a video called How Union Pay Scales Work for Public Schools. So talking about her experience as a teacher and working with unions. And I think some of these we may have already talked about, but we're going to go list them anyways. If you want a more peaceful world, another short piece from Dominic, who always submits these really nice, interesting poems and really short ideas to the website, and I'm always thankful for that. And also, Peaceful Parenting Breaks the Cycle of Violence from Danilo, Peaceful Anarchism. And going back, we've got further interviews. I also want to highlight for a moment, I don't have it here, but there's an article that I'm going to be adding from our newest contributor, Michael Fielding, who is an activist, free human, who I'm going to be interviewing in the next week or two. Him and his buddy Jared, they have a website that the Free Academy. They also did Sailboat Diaries, where they sailed down the coast and had a crazy adventure. They're promoting the idea of temporary autonomous zones and living free now. I've got them interested in the ideas of agorism. So some really interesting guys. They're going to be joining the website and contributing stuff to our page. And he sent me one yesterday called something like Being Free in the Moment, and I just felt like it was the perfect complement to the ideas that we try to promote on the Conscious Resistance Network, which is empowerment, education, awareness, philosophy, a spiritual relationship with yourself, with your God, with your higher power, with nature, with the universe, whatever you want to call it, and just choosing to be free now rather than waiting for some supposed utopian revolution to take place. Just being the revolution every day and in your own activity, in your own mind and heart, and in your decisions. And I'm happy for Michael to join that, and I'm also looking forward to interviewing him shortly so you guys can have that. And also another interview I'll be doing, which I'm really excited about, that I think you'll enjoy, is going to be with John Bush, a good friend and inspiration to me, out of Austin, Texas, discussing freedom cells. And there was a video we did a while back you can find on the website called Central Texas Mutual Aid Society, and John talks about this. But we're going to go further. We're going to talk a little bit about the history of organizing in this fashion and how freedom cells and this concept of organizing with 8 to 10 people can be applied in all kinds of ways, and specifically for me, organizing to protect our communities. So I'm excited about that. But let's dive in now to my top articles of the week. And again, all of these links will be found in the show information, and you can find them at derrickbros.contently.com. So I just mentioned that yesterday was July 4th, and I spent my day doing something. What did I do? Well, I spent my day hanging out with some friends, but before that, passing out flyers on the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the TPP. I'm guessing if you've found my podcast, you're aware of this, but for those who are not aware of what the TPP is, the Trans-Pacific Partnership is a multinational trade agreement, so-called free trade agreement, being negotiated currently by 12 different nations, including the United States, New Zealand, Japan, Australia, the UK, I can't remember the rest of them. And it's been talked about for a couple of years now, at least for the entire Obama presidency, and it's another one of these real shitty agreements that they call free trade agreements and get people all confused about what free trade is or what the free market is or what the freed market could be. and further distract you. But really, it's just a corporate trade deal. That's all it is. I mean, this basically is going to allow the state and the corporate partners to become stronger, to ingrain their power further into basically a stronghold for tyranny. What this is going to do is going to allow all these nations to override national law, to allow their corporate partners to be free from lawsuits, to be free from basically any kind of negative outcomes for shitty actions they take. And the whole thing's being operated and negotiated in secret. We should start there. The whole thing's being negotiated in secret. So everything I'm telling you about it is only what I've learned from my research based off of leaked chapters that have come out through WikiLeaks. Somebody's been leaking various chapters, but they're all out of date. The chapters aren't current, so they only provide a glimpse into what the TPP might look like, not what it actually does look like presently. So yeah, there's the theory and the idea, the possibility that it could actually be better than what we're expecting, but that doesn't really pan out historically. And if you understand how governments and their corporate partners work, yeah, I don't think they're going to be getting any better for us, the people. It'll be getting better for them to help maintain their their imagined authority and their corporate power, but not for the people. So all around, a real shitty deal, supposedly going to drive up medical costs. It's going to, as I said, create these international tribunals, supranational is what they are really called, that will have more authority than the individual nation states that are a part of the deal. So you can see it's bad all around. Well, guess what? Last Monday, June 29th, Obama signed this bill known as the Fast Track Bill, which is actually called the Trade Promotion Authority, which basically is something that's existed in the past, and most presidents, I think all presidents the last 20 years at least, have had access to this fast track thing, and it's just something that's being brought back up now in the mid 2010s for the Obama age. And Obama wants the same authority. Basically what this allows is if the president has fast track authority, which now he does because it's been signed into law, it means that anytime that a deal, international trade deal, which there's so many of them being negotiated right now, TPP is only one of three. There's actually the TTIP, which deals with Europe, and there's the TISA, I can't remember, security agreement, something, but they're all bad for us, the people, the individual, the free mind, the free human, and good for the corporations and for their state partners. So Obama now has fast track authority, and what that does is that anytime a deal like the TPP is negotiated, which the negotiations should conclude by the end of this month, July, then the trade representatives bring that deal back to Congress and say, hey, this is what we came up with. And since Obama has fast track authority, this means that the Congress, our supposed representatives, cannot amend the bill, they cannot filibuster it, they cannot, debate it, whatever. It doesn't really matter. All they get is an up or down, yes or no vote. So when it comes back and says, hey, we're giving all this stuff to these corporate people, it's going to have all these negative things, they can look at it and we can bitch and complain and call them whatever, and the best they can do is say no. But overwhelmingly, Congress has already shown, the House of Representatives, the Senate, all of these people that are fighting for power have already shown, even the presidential candidates, have shown that they are in support of the TPP. So I'm not saying just give up and to be hopeless. No, that's never an option. But this is why I hit the streets and passed out information, flyers that we made yesterday to try to talk to people about it. Because I hate to talk about any topic that I can't really give you a solution for. And like I said, you can try to call your representatives and hope that they're going to pass along the message, or maybe they'll vote no. And yeah, maybe that will happen. That's always a possibility, I guess, in some level. But I don't feel like that's the best use of my personal energy, so I'm going to hit the streets and try to talk to the average person and create a conversation. And sometimes that even feels inefficient or insufficient to my bigger goals, but I have to believe that there are still some things we can do, and ultimately you can live free now. Yes, we cannot, if this thing passes and it creates some international body that can basically override laws and come into this nation again, whether we support this idea of a nation or not, they can come into this nation and do whatever the hell they want and have no repercussions for it. That is pretty fucked up, and that's pretty bad, and we can't go stop that, but we can we can communicate, we can spread the idea. Do not forget how important it is to propagate the message of freedom. That's something that we have to continue to do. We must continue to propagate the message of freedom regardless of how dark things may seem, because that's a big part of spreading these ideas, is not only building your freedom now and living it every single day and actualizing yourself, self-actualized, self-realized person, and living that as an example to resonate that, that sort of message and that image out there, but you have to continue to propagate it. So this is an important part of it. I know it may seem simple, but sharing ideas on social media, creating flyers, putting up posters outside, putting propaganda out, they have their propaganda and their programming everywhere. We got to have ours as well. The next story, which is hugely important, I cannot underscore how big of a story this is, although it's received very little attention in the mainstream, old stream media. But I mean, that's nothing new. But even in the alternative media, I feel like there's so many things happening in the world and for me, I'm like, damn, I just wrote 10 to 12 stories in 1 week. That's how many important things are happening. Some of them are less important than others, but it's difficult because so much is happening that I feel like I have to often stop and be like, no guys, seriously, this is the one story. Like, I know I talk about a lot, but if you're paying attention to anything, this is the one thing. Pay attention to it. I feel like that about the TPP, which we just talked about. Definitely a huge important topic. But this next story is important and on a different level, because this reinforces the idea, the importance, and the power of having individual, free-thinking, free-willed human beings that are not just going to conform, that aren't just going to color in the lines and fly with the pack or stay in the herd. We have to, and if that's the way you live and that's who you are, then that's fine. But I'm just saying, don't let society, what is society? Society is made up of individuals, right? And of the state and all these. There's somebody out there. There's a message. There's an individual person, a group of people that work together, and not just one group. But I'm just saying generally, like, let's think of the media. Let's think of television and marketing, all this type of stuff. It's geared towards having you think and act and believe and live a certain way. They want you to shop at their stores. They want you to wear the clothes that the average person wears. They want you to shop at the malls. They don't want you to look different. They don't want you to think differently. They don't want you to question things. And this is why it is so important to do that. And this was recently highlighted even further by some new documents that were released by The Intercept via Edward Snowden, discussing a special unit within the British spy agency that is involved in psychological operations, also known as PsyOps. And these are propaganda campaigns against groups that it labels extremist. These documents show that the British Communications Headquarters, GCHQ, which is basically their NSA, they operate an elite unit known as the Joint Threat Research Intelligence Group, or JTRIG. So JTRIG is a small unit within GCHQ, the British NSA. So we found out about JTRIG last year through some other Snowden documents. We found out that they used denial of service attacks to shut down chat rooms and to just generally push propaganda on social media. But now we have even further details of how this unit operates. There are some interesting aspects of it. For one, this is supposed to be a unit that focuses on international traffic, but per usual, they focus on domestic. And you see the same thing in the United States. All the bodies, like say the CIA, that are only supposed to focus on domestic activity, they're involved in international spying. The agencies that are supposed to be involved with only international things, they're focusing on domestic. And the government just does whatever the hell it wants, basically. But The Intercept reports particularly revealing is a fascinating 42-page document from 2011 detailing JTRIG's activities. It provides the most comprehensive and sweeping insight to date into the scope of this unit's extreme methods, entitled Behavioral Science Support for JTRIG's Effects in Online Human Intelligence Operation. It describes the type of targets on which the unit focuses, the psychological and behavioral research it commissions and exploits, and its future organizational aspirations. And the whole thing is authored by a psychologist. So they got psychologists working with this elite unit that spies on internet traffic. She's teaching them how to understand human psychology and human behavior so that they can know how to manipulate your opinion online. The documents outline tactics employed by the agency, including ways to manipulate public opinion, understand human thinking and behavior, and encourage conformity. According to the documents, JTRIG, quote, currently collaborates with other agencies, including a whole host of British agencies. One of JTRIG's objectives includes monitoring domestic extremist groups such as the English Defence League by conducting online human intelligence, denying, deterring, or dissuading criminals and hacktivists, and deterring, disrupting, or degrading online consumerism of stolen data. Now, domestic extremists, this term keeps getting tossed around all around the world, all over the Western governments, and the danger in that is they get to define what is an extremist. And as if you've been paying attention, class, then you would know that over the past few years, what determines and what decides what is extremist behavior is a very tricky idea, very tricky definition, because they make very vague, broad language, and everyday, normal, protected behavior gets caught up under that. One of the reports from 2011 outlines JTRIG's tactics, including uploading YouTube videos containing persuasive communications, starting Facebook groups and Twitter accounts, and creating fake online personalities and supporters to, quote, discredit, promote distrust, dissuade, deter, delay, or disrupt. JTRIG also relies on an understanding of psychology, which is, quote, critical to their operations. The unit used social media campaigns to encourage and foster obedience and conformity. Section 3.6 obedience says compliance can be achieved by engendering liking, attractiveness, instilling a sense of scarcity or secrecy, or getting compliance to a small request at first, what they call getting the foot in the door. And what I write here is that essentially the UK government is using an elite unit of spies to launch psychological operations on extremists by creating fake accounts and videos to promote conformity and obedience. However, this practice is not exclusive to the US or to the UK. This has been used by the United States, and I go on to give examples of PsyOps, which actually the military no longer uses that term. It seems sometime between 2002 and now they're Department of Defense Dictionary of Military and Associated Terms has redefined, has removed PSYOP from their definitions and replaced it with Military Information Support Operations, or MISO, which is defined as planned operations to convey selected information and indicators to foreign audiences to influence their emotion, motives, objective reasoning, and ultimately the behavior of governments, organizations, groups, and individuals in a manner favorable to the originator's objectives. Yada, yada, yada. Propagandize people. And this right here, I think, is probably one of the most important documents, the one that I'm talking about now, but also this one I'm about to reference, which was leaked a couple years ago, and you can find it on WikiLeaks websites. It says this is the U.S. Special Forces Counterinsurgency Manual. Think about that. U.S. Special Forces, highly trained military men and women, counterinsurgency manual. So if we're the insurgents, that's what they would say, right? We're rising up against the U.S. government to make people free. They're the counterinsurgency. This is how they fight back against any possible evolution, revolution, insurgency. Psychological operations are essential to the success of population and resources control. For maximum effectiveness, a strong psychological operations effort is directed towards the families of the insurgents and their popular support base. So, propagandizing your family and your supporters. The PSYOP aspect of the Population and Resources Control Program tries to make the imposition of control more palatable to the people, so they want you to accept your own slavery, by relating the necessity of controls to their safety and well-being. They want you to accept your own slavery by making it clear to you that you will only be safe and your well-being will be preserved if you give over control. These PSYOP efforts also try to create a favorable national or local government image. They want you to buy the statist propaganda and counter the effects of the insurgent propaganda effort. So they want to counterbalance those who are speaking freely against the government with their own propaganda to maintain control. Well, that's that. Again, I recommend you reading both of these documents in the latest article about the British government and PSYOPs, and also the counterinsurgency manual. Solution, because we don't like to just talk about negativity without solutions. The solution, educate yourself about these topics, spread that. That's always going to be the first thing and the no-brainer. But also learn them, understand them, and I would say reverse them. Learn how to organize within your community. They want to organize and fight violently. I'm not encouraging that by any means. What I'm saying is we use the same tactics and the same strategies and the ideas of freedom cells to organize ourselves to be prepared to be armed with seeds, to be armed with ideas, to be armed with gardens, to be armed with technology, to be armed with compassion, and to be armed with a community that knows how to organize and work effectively together and to come together in time of need. That's what we need to combat this crazy bullshit. My next two stories focus on 9/11 because we are less than 6 months away from the anniversary of the 9/11 attacks, and it's always important to remember why we question that. This is actually a bit of positive news. In the weeks following September 11, 2001 terror attacks, the U.S. government rounded up several hundred individuals suspected of ties to terrorism. The arrests were allegedly based on tips received through a hotline. In total, 762 people were detained around the country. The detainees were held between 3 to 8 months in facilities in New York and New Jersey. Some individuals were even deported despite being found to have no ties to terrorism. No ties to terrorism. Jailed, imprisoned, and deported. Woo, it's a free country. Since that time, not one U.S. government official has been held accountable. However, this might change with a recent ruling from a federal appeals court. ABC News reports that the Second U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals has issued a 2-to-1 ruling that will allow a lawsuit against former top U.S. officials, including then Attorney General John Ashcroft and FBI Director Robert Mueller. The judges wrote that the treatment of detainees such as solitary confinement 23 hours a day with regular strip searches because their perceived faith or race placed them in the group targeted for recruitment by Al-Qaeda violated their constitutional rights. The ruling says the suffering endured by those who were imprisoned merely because they were caught up in the hysteria of the days immediately following 9/11 is not without a remedy. Rachel Miropol, an attorney with the Center for Constitutional Rights, said the decision may shed light on how then-President George W. Bush handled decision-making in the days following the attacks. So, the detainees' lawyers presented evidence that they were subject to being slammed into walls, bending or twisting of their arms, hands, wrists, and fingers, stepping on their leg restraints, leaving them handcuffed and shackled in cells, insulting their religion, and making humiliating sexual comments during their strip searches. Just good old American behavior. Originally filed in federal court in April 2002, the lawsuit now has 8 plaintiffs, all of who are Middle Eastern, North African, or of South Asian origin. Each of these plaintiffs was deported after being cleared of wrongdoing. And in her dissenting vote, Circuit Judge Rina Raggi said the government's actions, even if mistaken, were justified because of the possibility of further attacks. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And this is what the judge said. It is difficult to imagine a public good more demanding of decisiveness or more tolerant of reasonable, even if mistaken, judgments than the protection of this nation and its people from further terrorist attacks in the immediate aftermath of the horrific events of 9/11. So she's saying, oh, because we were all freaked the fuck out and not using our brain and not looking at the attack and just listening to propaganda and the possibility that there might be another attack, fear, then it's justified to take innocent people, to tie them up, put them in a cage, beat them up, strangle them, make sexually lewd comments at them, make fun of their beliefs, and then ship them out of the country even though they did nothing wrong. Oh, that's all justified. Right. All right. That's what they say. Have fear, no worry. But hopefully that lawsuit would lead to something. I mean, I got to put some hope or some faith somewhere, right? There's lawsuits when they get filed about 9/11, whether it's the victims' family members or to release the 28 pages or to sue people for the way they were treated after 9/11. I'm kind of like, part of me is like, yes, 9/11's being talked about. The issue won't die, right? But then at the same time, like, yeah, right. They're not going to find any wrongdoing. They're just going to investigate themselves and say, whoops, nothing wrong. But I did another article for Truth in Media called Rand Paul Reminds Us Why Questioning 9/11 Still Matters. And no, I don't support Rand Paul. But hey, if he's talking about 9/11, which is something I do care about, and questioning 9/11, which is what I do support, absolutely I'm going to write about it. On June 2nd, Senator Rand Paul stood with family members of the victims of the 9/11 terrorist attacks as he announced new bipartisan legislation that would force President Obama to declassify 28 pages of the Senate investigation into the attacks of 9/11. Senator Paul was joined at the press conference by Terry Strada, who is the national chair of the 9/11 Families and Survivors United for Justice Against Terrorism. She lost her daughter, Caitlin Strada, and Abraham Scott was also there, who was the husband of a victim. Also present were U.S. Representatives Walter Jones, Stephen Lynch, and Thomas Massey, and former U.S. Senator Bob Graham. This bill is called the Transparency for the Families of 9/11 Victims and Survivors Act of 2015, and it was also sponsored by two Democrats, Senator Ron Wyden and Kristen Gillibrand. And this is, of course, only the latest attempt by several people, family members, and representatives to try to get Obama to follow his word and to release these 28 pages, because those who have seen the pages have said they point to Saudi Arabia. And if we could just get that out in the open, I do think there are other nations involved. Likely elements of the U.S. government were also involved, and some point a finger at Israel as well. There's also Pakistani funding. There's a lot of things we don't know about 9/11, and we're not going to know the truth until we're willing to shine a light on some ugly truths. But of course, this would force the United States citizens and government to rethink their relationship with Saudi Arabia. And this all assumes that they're just innocent and playing along. But what I really do believe is that there's a lot more of a malicious intent behind these things. That's why they lie. That's why they won't shine a light on it, is because they're doing it on purpose. They're doing it on purpose. They wanted the 9/11 attacks to happen. Sorry, I'm just going a little crazy. When introducing the bill and standing at the press conference, Rand Paul said, "I stand with my colleagues today to call for the release of the final 28 pages of the 9/11 congressional inquiry. I firmly believe the family members of the victims of September 11th attacks have the right to know the details surrounding the tragedies that occurred on that day." And at this press conference, Paul also said, "Information revealed over the year does raise questions about Saudi Arabia's support, or whether their support might have been supportive to these al-Qaeda terrorists. We cannot let page after page of blanked out documents be obscured behind a veil, leading these families to wonder if there is additional information surrounding these horrible attacks." Terry Strada of the 9/11 Family Members Organization said, "Nearly every significant element that led to the attacks of September 11th points to Saudi Arabia." Sounds like there's a legitimate reason to question it. Sounds like the people who say that they know what's going on about 9/11 don't want to challenge it, don't know what they're talking about. They don't know what they're talking about. They don't like to listen, right? Well, alright, moving on. That's my 9/11 rant and stories. Got a couple more here. We're going to start shifting over towards the health topics now. First thing I'm going to talk about is another one that is just, to me, a no-brainer, and again, difficult for me to understand why people don't challenge it, and that is the topic of fluoride. Again, I'm going from 9/11 to fluoride. I understand that fluoride, water fluoridation, is not the most important topic in the world. I get that. I had some people tell me like fluoride, you're worried about fluoride when there's so many other things wrong in the world. Yeah, I know there's a lot of things wrong in the world. I don't assume that by fighting fluoride I'm going to fix the world, but I want to fix that which I can. And for those who are still in the matrix and living off the status system that is fluoridated, I want to remove that as much as possible. I want to educate them so they can make a knowledgeable choice. I want my brothers and sisters to be aware of the dangers that they're facing and not just blindly drinking poison. So I'm going to keep fighting to educate people about fluoride, whether or not that's going to bring down the state or if that's the biggest issue at all. It's still a part of the puzzle. It's a piece of the fabric that we are weaving as we create a new world, and that is education about your health. Despite claims by U.S. health officials, a new study says that water fluoridation does not improve oral health. This new study says that water fluoridation does not reduce cavities. A prominent independent network of researchers recently examined every available study on water fluoridation and found that the practice does not reduce cavities. The Cochrane Collaboration, a global independent network of researchers, professionals, and patients, narrowed the review down to the most comprehensive, well-designed, and reliable papers before analyzing and publishing their conclusion. According to Newsweek, the review identified only 3 studies since 1975 of sufficient quality to be included that addressed the effectiveness of fluoridation in the population at large. These papers determine that fluoridation does not reduce cavities to a statistically significant degree, says study co-author Anne-Marie Glennie, a health science researcher at Manchester University in the UK. The scientists also found insufficient evidence that fluoridation reduces tooth decay in adults. From the review, we were unable to determine whether water fluoridation has an impact on caries level in adults. Caries is another word for cavities. Trevor Sheldon, Dean of Hull York Medical School in the UK, conducted a review of water fluoridation in 2000 also. So 15 years ago, this guy did a water fluoridation review. Sheldon also concluded that the process is not effective. He says, I had assumed because of everything that I had heard that water fluoridation reduces cavities, but I was completely amazed by the lack of evidence. My prior review was completely reversed. He points out that some studies have actually shown that when water fluoridation was ceased, cavities went down a small percentage among school children. This includes a 2001 study of 2 British Columbia communities that was included in the Cochrane review. The Cochrane team also found that most studies confirming the effectiveness of fluoridation were completed prior to the widespread use of dental products such as mouth rinses and toothpaste. The study did find evidence that fluoridation was linked to a 26% decrease in cavities. However, this study was also done before the growth of modern dentistry, and the researchers write, quote, we have limited confidence in the size of this effective due to the high risk of bias within the studies and the lack of contemporary evidence. And they are not the first ones to say that there has been a limited amount of effective, reliable research showing positive benefits of fluoride, despite the fact that the health officials and the Houston mayor and all these politicians constantly reaffirm the benefits of fluoride. It's pretty obvious they haven't done any of their own research. In early June, the Health Research Board completed an in-depth review of the effects of water fluoridation. The review was conducted at the behest of the U.S. Department of Health. After examining all internationally peer-reviewed papers on the topics of fluoride and health effects from 2006 to 2014, get that again. So they took all of the international papers all around the world, peer-reviewed papers about fluoride and the health effects from 2006 to 2014, so the last 8 years. And the Health Research Board for the U.S. Department of Health found, quote, no definitive evidence that community water fluoridation is associated with positive or negative systemic health effects. Both the HRB review and the Cochrane review concluded that the majority of studies on fluoride, either for or against, were significantly flawed. The researchers found that around 70% of the studies did not account for conflicting factors, including sources of fluoride beyond tap water, diet, and ethnicity. Despite these new studies, the CDC continues to stand by their water fluoridation policy. Barbara Gooch, a dental researcher with the CDC's Division of Oral Health, told Newsweek that the review does not reduce the government's, quote, confidence in water fluoridation as a valuable tool to prevent tooth decay in children as well as adults. I mean, that's some freaking crazy thinking. I'm like, hey, look, here's a piece of paper that shows you that there's no positive health benefits of fluoride. Here's a piece of paper that shows you that there's no reduction of cavities because of water fluoridation. And your response is, well, we still believe it's a really good thing, and we're going to continue to do it because it does all those things. This is the world we live in, guys. Let's do what we can to fix it, because it's a little scary. This next two are related to herbicides, the popular herbicide. I keep my eyes and ears on pesticide, herbicide, insecticide news because of the heavy growth of the industry, somewhat related to the use of genetically modified, genetically engineered crops that need these pesticides and herbicides sprayed, and the ways that that's affecting the environment, our health, and our communities. So first off, another popular herbicide ingredient possibly causes cancer. Wow, this has been a hell of a month for cancer. Cancer's everywhere, apparently. The World Health Organization's International Agency for Research on Cancer has found another popular herbicide possibly causes cancer in humans. Doesn't that make you feel good? Possibly. The weed killer, 2,4-D, is the latest herbicide to be linked to cancer just months after the same organization found that glyphosate, the key ingredient in Monsanto's Roundup herbicide, probably causes cancer. So you got the world's most popular herbicide, Monsanto's Roundup, which includes glyphosate, and that probably causes cancer. And then you have the second most popular herbicide in the world, 2,4-D, and it possibly causes cancer. Whew! This is a hell of a month for these herbicides, man. I just see people using, nobody stopped buying Roundup. People are at the freaking store buying it right now. The IRC reviewed the latest scientific research before deciding to classify 2,4-D as possibly carcinogenic to humans, a step below probably carcinogenic. The U.S. EPA has been receiving pressure to restrict or prohibit the use of 2,4-D, while some farm group and pesticide industry groups say that the chemical does not need any more restriction. Now, I want you to read this article for yourself. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but let me just say the reason that this is interesting, that both of these herbicides have received these negative reviews, is because last year I was writing about a partnership that just formed between Monsanto and Dow Chemical. 2,4-D is made by Dow Chemical. Monsanto makes Roundup. So those are the two most popular herbicides in the world, and they both have these crazy chemicals in them. Well, they partnered up for a new herbicide from Dow's Agroscience division called Enlist Duo. This is one hell of a duo. You get 2,4-D and glyphosate. You get one chemical that probably causes cancer and one chemical that possibly causes cancer. Whew, that's going to be a hell of a treatment for the plants. I'm being sarcastic, obviously, and it really makes me sad to see this industry growing and the use of this. This is why I support organic gardening, urban farming that doesn't use pesticides and herbicides, because it's not helping us. It's not helping the environment or the planet in any way. And the thing about it is this partnership between Dow and Monsanto is specifically being done because they're trying to combat the superweeds. So they had to, like, okay, these both are making superweeds. They're making plants resistant and the weeds are getting stronger. Let's just combine them together and see if that makes it work. The thinking here, guys, I'm not really sure what kind of thinking or if there is any thinking, but read the rest of the article and you'll see that the herbicide industry is a dangerous growing problem. But this next piece of information is actually a little bit positive, and we'll hope that it leads to something good. But again, it's coming from the government, so don't hold your breath. But the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, has announced that they will study the effects of glyphosate on endangered species. Glyphosate is the Monsanto herbicide. And this came as part of a settlement with the Center for Biological Diversity. The EPA will now be forced to study the impacts of the two most commonly used herbicides on endangered plants and animals within the United States. The Center for Biological Diversity, which is a nonprofit conservation organization which is dedicated to the preservation and protection of endangered species and wild places, had recently filed a lawsuit with the EPA for not studying the effects of pesticides and herbicides on endangered species. So these have never been studied, but they're being used everywhere. The nonprofit also agreed to a settlement with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services last year, which required the agency to analyze the impacts of these herbicides on endangered species. So go you. Center for Biological Diversity is kicking ass with these lawsuits, forcing the government to do things that probably should have been done already. The EPA will now analyze the impacts of atrazine and glyphosate. The agency will complete the assessments by June 2020. June 2020. So they're not going to finish this freaking study for another 5 years, but they're going to keep using them and they're going to keep approving of these things. It makes a lot of sense, right? Atrazine has been linked to an increased risk of birth defects. Glyphosate, as I just said, has been called probably carcinogenic by the World Health Organization. Oh, well. The EPA has not studied the ecological impacts of glyphosate since 1993. Wow. Yeah. So that's another one for you. They're going to study it, but it's also a little bit depressing. What is the solution, right? Let's stay solution-based, solution-focused. Well, it's a beautiful day right now. You could get up, walk outside. You could go find the local community garden in your area. You could go get involved. You can start volunteering your time. You can order online seeds, which are heirloom, non-GMO, non-hybrid, and you can start a garden. You can start an herb garden in your house. You can start a seed bank. You can go to the farmer's market and buy your stuff from the people who are at least doing it. Or if you go to the big grocery stores, at least buy organic stuff. So in some smaller, indirect, but good way, you are supporting organic farmers. You can start to do educate yourself and do research on these topics. Stop buying and using herbicides and pesticides. Educate those around you. Try to get them to stop using them. Things like that. There's your solutions for the day. Two more stories here related to health and the environment, and we're out of here, guys. It's been a good, fun afternoon sitting here talking to myself, talking to you, and I hope you find this news informative. I want to remind you again, you're listening to the Conscious Resistance News Wrap-Up from the Conscious Resistance Network, and my name is Derrick Bros. Thank you guys for tuning in, for listening. Please subscribe to all of our channels. Support our contributors, become a contributor, sign up on the website, contact me, Derrick at theconsciousresistance.com, and I'll get you set up if you want to join. We've got a lot of information to share, and I know you've got a valuable part to play, so join up with us, help change the world. This next story is about geoengineering, and I'm actually writing a follow-up to this story, which is a bit more positive. This one comes from the anti-media. Scientists say geoengineering the sky is necessary to save the coral reefs. A group of scientists from universities in the United States, the United Kingdom, and Australia have released a new study calling for geoengineering of the climate in order to save the coral reefs from a process known as bleaching. The researchers, including authors from the Carnegie Institution for Science, the University of Exeter, the Met Office Hadley Centre, and the University of Queensland in Australia, call for geoengineering the climate using a practice known as solar radiation management. SRM involves spraying aerosols from planes in an attempt to reflect the sun's light with the purpose of preventing rising sea surface temperatures. The scientists write, "Our work highlights the importance of the sort of climate scenarios that now need to be considered if the protection of coral reefs is a priority. The scientists say this step may prevent sea temperatures from rising 1 to 2 degrees in temperature. If the temperatures do rise, the coral reefs will start turning white or bleaching. The rise in temperature disrupts the symbiotic relationship between the coral and algae, causing the coral to lose its color and disabling its ability to eat the algae. Bleaching alone will not kill the coral, but if it continues to reject the algae and the temperatures remain high, the coral will die." And these are obviously beautiful, very important ecosystems on our planet, and this is something that is happening because of the destruction to the environment. And mass bleaching is predicted over the coming decades, and scientists say the geoengineering, the climate, may be the only way to limit the damage. And this is really interesting. They call for an international team. This research was published in the journal Nature Climate Change. And I go in here to provide some examples of geoengineering and weather modification and the warnings that have been offered by many people about the dangers of geoengineering. And I'll just give you a sneak peek. My follow-up article that I'm going to write about geoengineering has to do with gardening. Ta-da! Look, I found this article. It says that coral gardening beckons ecotourists to restore reefs. Apparently, it's kind of becoming a trend where they're inviting people to come to the reefs to participate in coral gardening. So you get to go break off a piece of the coral reef and then replant it elsewhere, and then it regrows and builds more reef. And that's pretty freaking awesome. That sounds like a lot better idea than this dangerous science of geoengineering, which is barely a science because they don't know what they're doing. And the models and the studies they have done say that we could possibly lose blue skies. Like, you're really considering doing something that might eliminate blue skies for all of future humanity, that might actually heat up the planet, and is just playing God, playing with nature. And I don't think we should be doing that. But that brings me to my last article here. I want to talk about this one because it's an interesting point. This article was going viral over the past few weeks. The study specifically, new study says that the Earth is experiencing 6th mass extinction. Now, on the surface, this seems like, oh shit, here's more bad news about humans destroying the planet. And, some people would say, oh, humanity is the problem. But I ask in this article, are we really the problem, or is there an opportunity for us to be the solution? In this study, a group of scientists from Stanford University, Princeton University, the University of California, Berkeley, and others warned that the Earth is experiencing a 6th mass extinction area. They are calling for fast action to save endangered species and habitats. And see, this kind of plays into the whole geoengineering thing. The scientists claim that species are disappearing at up to 100 times faster than the normal rate between mass extinctions, known as the background rate. And this study was published in the journal Science Advances. They say, if it is allowed to continue, life would take many millions of years to recover, and our species itself would likely disappear early on. The researchers compared fossil records for vertebrates and extinction counts from a variety of records. They concluded that humans are creating a, quote, global spasm of biodiversity loss. They blamed several actions for the destruction of life, including land clearing for farming, logging and settlement, carbon emissions, toxins that alter and poison ecosystems, and the introduction of invasive species. The researchers told Stanford University that their estimates were conservative and that the situation may be much worse than previously believed. We emphasize that our calculations very likely underestimate the severity of the extinction crisis because our aim was to place a realistic lower bound on humanity's impact on biodiversity. Now, this is an interesting part right here. Paul Ehrlich, Being professor of population studies and biology and a senior fellow at the Stanford's Woods Institute for the Environment and also a co-author for the study, said, "The study shows without any significant doubt that we are now entering the sixth great mass extinction event." And this is where I ask, is humanity the problem or can we be the solution? And this is also important why you need to be educated, understand lots of information, and well-read so that you can take all things into consideration when it comes to these ideas. Without a doubt, the Earth is suffering. The planet is ravaged with environmental disasters, loss of important ecosystems and species, and a population that seems increasingly ignorant to the impact it is having on the rock they call home. Every free mind should work to live in harmony with this planet and reduce the impact of our existence on this beautiful, unique place we call Earth. That is without question. What we should question, however, are the motives for governments and other parasitic classes who promote the idea that humanity is the problem that needs to be corrected. Indeed, Professor Ehrlich's involvement might set off a few alarms for those who are familiar with the topic of eugenics. Eugenics is the belief that humans can be improved through genetic or social engineering. In 1981, Ehrlich, who again is one of the authors on this study, wrote the book Extinction, The Causes and Consequences of the Disappearance of Species. Before that, he wrote another book called Ecoscience. Some of you may be familiar with this book. It was published in 1977 with John Holdren, who is currently the Obama administration's science czar. Ecoscience promotes a number of radical ideals for dealing with the world's population. Some of these ideas include forced abortions enforced by a global police force, which requires the loss of individual sovereignty. And I give examples. Forced abortions, he discusses poisoning the water to force fertility control. They write about the global police force. And after this new study, the National Review accused Ehrlich of once again pushing ecological doomsday, something that he has been accused of in the past. His first book was in 1968 called The Population Bomb, and this book went on to become a bestseller, but all of his theories have largely been discredited because he was saying by the early 2000s that the United States and Britain would be starving, there would be mass populations dying everywhere, and it was going to be because the population became so big and we couldn't sustain it, so we had to have population control. Is this study full of shit just because of Ehrlich's involvement? No, not at all. He's just one person in the team of scientists. And without a doubt, as I said, we should look at our actions that we're taking and the way that we're harming this planet and work to remove ourselves from those systems, mainly the state, that are harming the planet. But we should also take into account the motivations of the people who are involved in propagating this message. They want you to believe that humanity is the problem, and the only way to fix that is to eradicate or to remove or to lower the population so that we can have a manageable population, right? Basically those who won't question, who can be ruled over why they take the riches of the planet, right? That's what they want. But we say no. We say we are free. We say we are beautiful, free, independent, human, empowered, conscious human beings that can do anything we put our minds to. And with that in mind, we go forth, we spread knowledge, we spread awareness, and we build the future. We build it in our hearts first by healing and working all of our issues, our doubts, insecurities, and fears so that we can become stronger and more empowered. And we use that and we become an example. We shine our light outwardly to reflect and to encourage others to do the same. And as they do the same, they become beautiful and empowered, and it spreads and it spreads. And we build the new systems from within ourselves outwardly. Because we don't need this state, and we don't need to hold on to the past that limits and holds us back. As I said, I did a video called Finding Honesty in a Free World, and I came very clean about some of my flaws and my lies and just dishonesty. I've been living double and triple lives the past couple years, and it's been so heavy on me. And now it's felt good to come clean and to open up who I really am and to claim myself and to claim the role that I know I'm supposed to be doing. Right now, I know I'm supposed to be communicating with you, to spread these ideas, to spread awareness. And I hope that something I've said in the last hour, some piece of information, some article or news tidbit has helped you and helped you create a fuller picture of your own research and your own ideas. Please contact me if you ever want to talk. Derrick at theconsciousresistance.com. You can find me on Twitter at dbrosLiveFree, and every now and then I'm on Facebook if you want to try to hit me up there. But let's stay in touch. It's a big, crazy world, and we got to do something about it. And we can do it together. We can do it by starting on healing ourselves. Thank you guys for listening. I'll be back next week with a new podcast. As always, if you can hear this, you are the resistance. Peace.